Dr. Nigel J. Holden is a prolific modern academic in the world of international human resource management, or IHRM. His scope of research spans a number of IHRM topics, to include cross-cultural management, international marketing, and intercultural business communications. But it's his research in knowledge management that has distinguished him as a key academic in the field of IHRM. In the early 1980s, after working in exporting and trade promotion, he obtained his PhD from the Manchester Business School and embarked on a 3-decade-long career of teaching cross-cultural management at universities around the world. In 2007, Dr. Holden helped to co-found the European Journal of International Management, and in 2008, he was described by the International Journal of Cross-Cultural Management as having influenced a generation of scholars in North America and Europe, with his work on knowledge management combined with his unconventional approach to traditional thinking about cross-national values. He retired from full-time teaching in 2010, but continues to research and give keynote addresses. Dr. Holden has published several academic articles and books covering a range of IHRM themes, but he is most famous for his critique of the long-time accepted model of cross-cultural management. His famous 2002 book, Cross-Cultural Management, A Knowledge Management Perspective, lays out the framework for why he believes that the model that the IHRM community has been using to understand cross-cultural management is misguided, and how tackling the subject from a knowledge management approach provides greater qualitative results. Though recognizing the accomplishments of former IHRM researchers, such as Hofstede and Trompenaars, Dr. Holden is critical of previous models of cross-cultural management due to their reliance on the classical concepts of culture derived from Western-centric anthropologists of the 1950s and 1960s. He argues that these previous models provide an overly simple and general lens with which to view cultures through, and that their inability to break down cultural nuances past the national and organizational levels makes them extremely vulnerable to generalizations and stereotyping. Prior to Dr. Holden, cross-cultural management was often viewed as an impediment to effective and efficient business practices. It was seen as an inevitable set of problems that could be remedied with a clear set of solutions. The old equation for cross-cultural management is thus: a core set of problems, starting with ethnocentrism in the face of cultural diversity, experienced as culture shock, which varies with experience and may be lesser or greater in impact. A core set of solutions is then developed to remedy these core sets of problems, beginning with adaptation as the first reaction to culture shock, moving to adjustment as a more permanent and positive reaction, and finishing with development of intercultural skills, possibly through training interventions, creating the cross-cultural manager. Ultimately, the end state is a cookie-cutter solution that assumes an often adversarial relationship between different cultures. Instead of this rigid, overly formulaic model, Dr. Holden's knowledge management approach provides for greater fluidity in cross-cultural management. Simply defined, knowledge management is the process of creating, sharing, using, and managing the knowledge and information of an organization. Through this definition, one can discern both the implicit and overt requirements necessary. Overt being direct tasks such as creating, sharing, and using knowledge, and implicit being constantly shifting corporate strategy based upon the most relevant knowledge available at the time. Dr. Holden's emphasis on knowledge management can be further broken down into two specific kinds of knowledge: explicit and tacit. Much of cross-cultural management previous assumptions fall into the explicit knowledge category. This is knowledge gleaned from easily derived and noticeable aspects of a culture. It often provides broad brushstrokes, assumptions, and, though limited, may provide a starting point from which to pivot. Tacit or experiential knowledge is derived from the day-to-day interactions with people and provides a much clearer picture into an individual's culture. This kind of knowledge, though often more valuable, is hard to pin down due to its frequently intangible nature. By focusing on a knowledge management approach that accounts for both explicit and tacit knowledge, Dr. Holden's model allows for an ever-changing, flexible method of cross-cultural management, appropriate in today's global corporate environment. This, as opposed to the long-held cross-cultural management status quo, fosters organizations that can modify their approaches based upon the knowledge that they create, acquire, and transfer. The real-world application of Dr. Holden's theory can be witnessed through his extensive research into Japanese market integration. In his joint 2005 article, Applying Knowledge Management Concepts to the Supply Chain, How a Danish Firm Achieved a Remarkable Breakthrough in Japan, Dr. Holden uses the Dutch manufacturing company Roosendaal as a case study for his knowledge management theory. Despite being successful in Western markets, Roosendaal initially had trouble breaking out of the mold while using conventional, explicit knowledge about Japanese society to sell its products. After making a conscious effort to change its approach, Roosendaal decided to create a Japanese office in Denmark and hire local Japanese nationals to staff the office and perform the functions of direct interaction and knowledge sharing. The end state of this decision was that Roosendaal created a niche market for themselves, while also adapting their practices to facilitate long-term relationships with that same Japanese market. The truly unique thing about this case study is the fact that Roosendaal, despite being a multinational corporation, was not large enough to invest in a full-time presence in Japan. This lack of resources forced Dutch executives to bring Japanese locals to Denmark and conversely travel to Japan frequently. These two acts inadvertently forced the executives to gain and retain significantly more tacit knowledge than they would have if a regional headquarters office had been built in Japan. Since writing about this case study in 2005, Dr. Holden's theory of knowledge management has continued to attract more and more attention. Much like the Dutch company Roosendaal, most multinational corporations are not giant Fortune 500 monoliths who can afford to place regional headquarters around the globe. But also much like Roosendaal, this in no way puts them at a disadvantage in being able to leverage knowledge management capabilities.